Hey folks, this is Vince with Ads Gaming Addiction, and today we're going to check out the Game of 49. It supports 2 to 5 players, it's for ages 10 and up, and the average play time is between 30 and 45 minutes. The idea of this game is very simple. Get 4 in a row. You've got this board, you've got numbers on it, and each player will have chips of a particular color, and you'll be tasked with getting 4 of your chips in a row. But it's not that simple. Players will actually be auctioning for these particular spaces. These number cards will come up, and players will be spending money that's in their own bank, or whatever you want to call it, in order to acquire these cards. And if you happen to acquire that card, you get to put a chip of your color on that space. There's a little bit more to it than that, so let's go ahead and take a quick look at the components and see how it's played. Alright, so as far as your components are concerned, we'll start with this deck of cards in the upper left-hand corner. There are 60 cards in this deck. Now you're probably wondering, okay, so there are 49 spaces on the board, so how can there be 60 cards? Well, in addition to your number cards, which again match the board here, 6 and 30 for example, you've also got these wild cards. That's why there's a few extra in the deck. And this basically allows the player that wins this card to put a token of their color on any of the spaces that are listed on the card. So for example, if this player wins a card, then they could put a token on the 42 space, or the 43 space, or the 45 space, assuming it's not taken. If you're having a hard time envisioning where this is on the board, just look at the color. This is a green wild card, and you'll see a green outline on the board. Same thing with this wild, 1 through 24. If you have a hard time reading the numbers or trying to picture where this is on the board, then just look at the color. It's blue, and there's a blue outline here. So I like the fact that in addition to the numbers being here, it's actually color-coded. There's also this center space, red, red. So yeah, very simple. I'll explain what these do a little bit later. In addition to the cards, you've got player chips. Again, there are 5 different colors representing the 5 different possible player colors in the game: red, orange, yellow, green, and blue. Then you've got some money over here, 4 denominations: 1, 5, 10, and 20. Okay, so with regard to game setup, you want to put the board in the center of the table where everyone can reach it. Someone will be assigned as the banker, and that banker will give everyone $49 in starting cash: 3 10s, 3 5s, and 4 1s. After that, each player chooses a particular color and receives the tokens of that color. There's more off to the side here. This is just for quick example purposes. You also want to take the deck of cards here, shuffle them up, and then put them in this tray. This comes out, and then give it to the starting player, whoever you want that to be. Now that tray is passed around throughout the game. Honestly, I don't like that. I just think it's easier to leave the cards in the center of the table, and whoever's turn it is can just reach across the table and draw the next card, but that's just me. Alright, so this game is broken up over a series of turns, and on a particular turn, the active player will go ahead and draw the top card from the deck and lay it out for all to see. It's 15. At that point, the active player will start the bidding process. They'll say, let's say it's this player's turn. They'll say, okay, I'll bid $1 on that card. Then this player goes, no, I'll bid $2, and this player says 3, and this player says 4. If there's more than 2 players, then you'll just go around the table in clockwise order. But whenever players end up passing consecutively, the player with the top bid will end up winning the card. So let's just say that this player here bid $5. This player passed, and that was it. So this player would end up winning the card. This card goes in front of them, just in case the board gets bumped or whatever and players' chips end up flying all over the place. You'll be able to quickly repopulate the board based on what card you have in front of you. But this player won the 15, so this player would simply put one of their chips onto the 15 space. Very simple stuff. They'll also pay $5 to the bank, like so. Now once a card has been auctioned off, that'll end the turn, and the active player will push the cards off to their left. Again, you'll be wanting to use this insert here, but honestly I don't think the card tray is necessary. If you keep the cards in a centralized area, the next active player can just reach across the table and draw a new card. So just to quickly go over all of that again, let's say it is now Yellow's turn to be the active player. They're going to go ahead and draw a card. It's an 8. Now, one thing about this game, you do not have to bid if you don't want to. There is a rule in the rulebook, but it's optional. There's a little number on the bottom of these cards. This one says $2. That is the minimum bid. But again, this is an optional rule. Players can decide not to use it if they don't want to. Let's just say we're not using it. This player can, in theory, pass on this if they don't want to. They don't have to start with a bid or anything like that. They're going to take a look at that 8 and say, well, I've got 2 here. Why would I want to put a token all the way out there for? And then blue looks at it and says, I don't want that either. So both players pass. In that event, if everyone passes consecutively without bidding, then that card just simply goes into a discard pile. And then that turn ends and the cards again get pushed off to the next person. Alright, now before I move on to the next section, you're probably wondering, well, where did these chips come from? They spontaneously appeared in between segments. This is just for example purposes. I put them there randomly. This is not actual gameplay, okay? And it's actually to emphasize the next part of this video. And that is with regard to these payoff cards, or these wild cards. Now, these wild cards are auctioned off normally. Players will bid back and forth trying to win this card. And let's just say that blue ends up winning this card, okay? Now, whenever that happens, they have to pay money to the bank as usual, but they can put 1 chip on any of these numbers, assuming that it's a free space. You cannot kick someone off of another space. So he's going to take a look at this and say, well, I really like this 32 down here. That'll give me 3 in a row and set me up for a possible win on 47 or 11. Now after that, players will observe the payoff. And the way that works is players earn $7 for every chip they have on the board. This player has 4, so 7 times 4 is 28. This player has 2, so 7 times 2 is 14. So each player will receive money based on how many chips they have on the board. So that sort of introduces a risk-reward system. You know, do you wait until you get the numbers that you need to get 4 in a row, or do you risk putting chips randomly around the board, wasting money, wasting space, but you know, in the hopes that a payoff card will come up and you'll rake it in big? So there's a little decision making to be made here. Okay, so there are a few other miscellaneous rules I want to quickly go over. With regard to earning money during a payoff, there is a cap of $49. So the most you can earn is $49. So if you're trying to put 15 chips on the board, I don't even know if there are that many in here, but if you're trying to put a lot of chips onto the board, at most you can only make 49. In a 2-player game, there are special rules. The more chips you have on the board, the less money you actually start making. So it's important to emphasize that. I think, yeah, it's back here. For 8 chips on the board, it's $42, 9 chips is $35, 10 chips is $28. So a 2-player game works a little differently. If you're playing 3 to 5 players, then the maximum you can earn is 49. So keep that in the back of your mind. More chips isn't always necessarily better. Getting up to 7 certainly is, but once you're past 7, you'll want to think a little bit more on where you're putting everything. With regard to the Wild 49 card, I mentioned before that you cannot kick another player off a space. This particular number is the exception. If blue happens to win this card, they can kick yellow right off of it. Luckily, there are a few of these in the deck, so you know, you may even see this space changing hands a few times throughout the game. Alright, there you have it, a quick look at the game of 49. It's important to stress that I did not cover all of the rules found in the manual. This was just to give you a quick overview so that you can decide if it would be something that you and your family would like to play. As far as my first impressions and what I thought about the game, I really enjoyed this one. It's very simple to play. It reminds me a little of Acquire, but Acquire is definitely miles ahead in terms of strategy and gameplay. This is definitely a more dumbed down version, but dumbed down doesn't mean that it's not fun. It's definitely more casual and family friendly than Acquire is. My only concern is the price tag, and I tend to be a cheapskate, so take that complaint with a grain of salt. I think the retail price was like $25 or something like that. I think the quality of the chips could have been a little better for a $25 game. Sequence is another game on the market. I think it's like 15 or 20 bucks, and it features full-sized poker chips, and it has a larger game board than this. So again, I could be, being a cheapskate here, but when you compare this game and its components to another game like Sequence, you'll see, well, why am I paying $5 more for a game that has lesser quality components? Granted, I'm not a developer, so there may be some hidden costs behind the scenes that I'm not aware of. Maybe these larger companies that make games like Sequence are able to buy in bulk and get a discount of some sort. I don't know. But as a consumer, you look at the price tag, and that's what I look at. But yeah, other than that, honestly, I think the game is very enjoyable, and I think it's worth picking up if you like what you see here today. If you want to see my full written review, you can, www.dadsgamingaddiction.com. If you haven't already, subscribed to my YouTube channel. That way you can keep up to date with any new content I happen to publish. This is Vince, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.